And today I want to show you all a pretty solid scan. This one is focused on MACD divergence. So it's actually based on this book called the Visual Investor. It's by John Murphy, and there's actually a section where he discusses MACD divergences. And what he points out is that a positive divergence between the MACD and the MACD histogram is actually one of the first signs that a stock is starting to move higher. And I've noticed that when a MACD histogram is below zero, but it's trending to be above zero, that's a pretty good indicator. Like it's a sign of a reversal. Um, but what is new is that divergence between the MACD itself and the histogram. So this scan is basically going to touch on that. So we're going to be looking for stocks where the MACD is below zero and has actually dropped 5% in the last 10 days, while the MACD histogram has done the opposite. It's risen 5% in the last 10 days. And hopefully we should see something interesting from that. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. We'll go ahead and open up a new scan. I'm going to keep the first line the same type of stock, and I'm also going to add my personal filters of making the country, the US, and making the closing prices greater than zero or greater than one, and um, less than, we'll do 200 today, so we get some pretty narrow results. Okay, and the rest of it, it's not predefined, we're actually gonna have to type out. So like I mentioned, we're looking for a divergence. So in order to do that, and we want the positive divergence to be on the histogram. So starting with the MACD line, we want to see that it's less than zero. So let's go ahead and type in MACD line and change this to less than zero. And remember, we're looking at this over 10 days, right? And we want to see that it is less than 10%. And so to do that, we're going to make sure that today's MACD line, right, is actually less than it was 10 days ago. And don't forget your parameters, right? But we're not done quite yet. We actually want to, if we're going to be looking at 10 days ago at 5%, we're going to need to factor in that information. And we're doing the absolute value specifically so that we can get both the positive and negative MACD line. And we'll also do it for the histogram so we can get those values as well. So from here, we'll do absolute value of 10 days ago, MACD line, right? And then we're going to multiply that so we get 5%. Okay. And let me just make sure. Okay, I forgot a parenthesis. Oh, that parenthesis is actually going here. Oops, sorry. It's actually going to go here. Perfect. All right, so now that we've done the MACD line, we got to do the MACD histogram. So here we want to see the opposite. We want to see a positive trend or an upward trend. And so what we want to see here is that the MACD line is greater than zero for today. But we also want to see that 10 days ago, the MACD line wasn't above zero. So to do that, we're going to type in, we got to also make sure we have our brackets right. So MACD histogram was less than zero. Okay, and then we can close that off. And then the last part is the factor similar to the MACD line. We want to make sure that the 10 days ago and 5% factors are added. So we'll go ahead and do the MACD line for today is actually greater than it was 10 days ago. Right? And then we're going to add the absolute value for the for 10 days ago, the MACD histogram. Okay, and don't forget to multiply it by 5% as well so that we get those positive, not the 5%, but the absolute values, so we get the positive and negative values for the histogram, which will give us a more accurate scan. So probably missing, okay, let's make sure that goes at the end here. All right, and so we'll run the syntax, make sure everything looks good, and we'll go ahead and run the scan. And so we see that we have 57 results, so I'm going to filter out the closing price. And let's go ahead and look at one example. We'll look at Fulgent Genetics. And we're not actually looking at the chart, but we're going to be looking here at the MACD. And what you can see is, this probably isn't the best indicator, but because it's literally crossing zero just now. But you can see that over time, the histogram has actually trended upwards, while during that same time, the MACD has trended downwards. But this MACD the MACD line is crossing the MACD signal, so that's a good indicator. Let's look at another example and let's see if we can find one that's a little bit more pronounced. So let's look, for example, let me go ahead and filter this. Let's go ahead and look at this first one, ALLK. And it's just very slightly a little bit better, but you can see here that over the past 10 days, it has been increasing, while here it's actually been decreasing as well. But this MACD line has crossed as well. So those two examples, I'll try to find one more that I'm hoping is a little bit more pronounced, but overall you get that the point still stands, that this is still a MACD divergence. And this is actually probably a better example. So here we have a very clear upward trend. This is greater than zero, right? And we've seen a clear divergence here. But this is less than zero. This is greater than zero. But you're seeing that the MACD line is crossing over the signal. So that's another sign that this is probably going to be starting to move higher, right? And you also want to check volume too, as long you want to see that the volume is also increasing as well. That's another sign that trading activity is increasing, right? But that's the MACD divergence scan for you all, and I hope it was really helpful. So tomorrow I'll show you another pretty solid scan, but this one's based on this is based on a person that got their fame from a particular website. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But take care, everyone.